Hi, I'm Mark Mazzaferro, Public Information Officer for the City of Vacaville, and this is another episode of On the Beat with Vacaville Police Chief John Carli. John's here today to tell us about a new piece of equipment that the police department has acquired, and he's brought a guest along to give us even more information about this vehicle behind us. It's an ARV, an Armored Rescue Vehicle. So John, first of all, thanks for taking some time out of your day, as always.
You're welcome. It's always good to spend time with you.
Yeah, and this monstrosity behind us, it's a huge piece of equipment, but it serves a very important role in our department and departments across the country. So why don't you tell us, first of all, what it is, how we got it, and what our plans are for it.
Well, very interesting. It seems to be very large and intimidating, but it is. It's just that. It's a mine-resistant vehicle that the military once used, and it's fairly new. While it might have been in use around 2008, everything about it was rebuilt in 2013, and we took possession of it last year. But we didn't formally bring it onto service until January of this year when we took it to the council.
Now, did we have something like this before? I mean, not like this, but we had some sort of rescue vehicle that we used before in certain cases, right?
Well, very interestingly, we had what you would think of as a bank vehicle, you know, the boxed money transport vehicles that you would see between banks. And we had one of those in service that was donated to us for well over a decade, and it was old when we got it. And it served its purpose, and we retired it last year just because it no longer was useful to us. So for the last couple of years, Chad and several in the organization were looking for how do we replace this in an end of life, and what would be that next tool.
Sure.
So this wasn't technically our first choice. There is commercial vehicles out there that are for law enforcement. Very expensive though.
I was just going to say, so let's say we wanted to buy one of these vehicles, how much would we have had to spend?
The cost could be somewhere around $500,000 on the light side.
$500 million.
Yes.
And this vehicle cost us about
$0.
Well, that's $500,000 savings.
It's actually worth
tough to argue with, right?
It's actually worth, according to the books, around $733,000 if you don't include the extra set of tires that they included when we picked it up.
Plus air and a CD player, right? No, I'm sorry.
It is radio equipment, but not a CD player.
Oh, it's got a radio. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when we took possession, it didn't look quite like this. Stripping down some of the exterior items that weren't necessary, and there's a lot of things that people don't know about this, and it seems to be from the stigma some offensive vehicle, but there's no tracks, there's no offensive weapons to this. It's simply a Caterpillar chassis with an armored box.
Right.
And so it's a rescue vehicle, and it's something that we use in our city quite often when we do planned events, but also for the unfortunate unplanned event. Well,
I mean, the comment you hear is this is the militarization of our police department. And I kind of chuckle when I hear that because, take a look around, pick up a paper. The bad guys are just as heavily armed as a lot of military operations. And anything that's going to protect our officers, how can you find any fault with that at all? But yet people still do. And for free. I mean, it just boggles my mind that there's any controversy or concern about this piece of equipment when it's going to save a life ultimately.
Well, and that's true. And so we were very careful when the recommendation came to me from those who are part of our SWAT team, and then of course, Officer Hudson's been very involved in the transitioning of this from what it was being used in the military just to transport teams to how can we bring it into the city of Vacaville and make it available as a rescue vehicle and bring it onto the types of tactics that we find in modern policing. Not a militarization of policing,
right,
but a modernization of policing in the changing tactics. And so that's what we've done. And just a minute we'll do a walk around and Chad can explain some of the things that were done. But in all,
sure,
this, from the shipping to the paint to the radios to the lights to everything, $25,000 to make it what it is today, and it wasn't even any cost to the general fund. It was alternative funding. So we really were sensitive to how do we do this and have a $750,000 tool at no cost to local taxpayers.
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we go take a look inside?
Absolutely.
Chad can show us around, and we'll find out a little bit more about the ARV.
Would love to do that.
So Chad, why don't you show us some of the finer points of this vehicle, and let's keep in mind and make sure everybody understands this is a defensive vehicle, not an offensive vehicle. It's for protection more than anything else, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
There's really nothing super exciting on the outside of the rig because, like you said, it is just defensive. So there's no gun ports and there's no gun turrets or anything like that. There's no hidden missile launchers or anything inside here. It's basically just a heavily armored vehicle that transports us to and from safely. Probably one of the biggest points of interest here is these doors here are up armored, which means they have an extra set of armor on them, so they're really heavy. So what we have to do is they're equipped with hydraulic rams for opening and closing them. Otherwise, they're extremely difficult to get open and close.
Wow. And I see the gas tank obviously is protected too. It's got some sort of wrapping around it.
Correct. And most of the armor protection is for the crew compartment. It's not so much the chassis itself. But these are run flat tires. So if somebody were to strike them or something, they were to start losing air, what this system does is it pumps an excess amount of air to keep it inflated and give you enough time to get out of the dangerous situation. So, and they're also adjustable inside the cab, depending upon what type of surface we're going to drive on. So if we were going to go on a sandy surface off-road, it'll air the tires down on the inside of the cab. So all that stuff is controlled from the inside, so we don't have to get out. We can stay protected on the inside.
Now this is armor plating here, right? I mean,
correct. The actual hull of the vehicle is steel armored, and these plates on the outside, after doing some research and breaking a lot of drill bits on it at the courtyard, is a real dense aluminum.
How thick is it? It looks like it's about 1.5 inches thick.
Yeah, the actual aluminum plating on the outside is about 1 3/4 inches thick.
Wow. Holy cow. All right, well, let's come around to the back. This is this always down, or does it fold up, or?
It folds up for when we're driving down the street, but if we're going to go do an operation or something and we have to quickly get out, then we can travel with it down.
Okay. No hydraulics on these?
No hydraulics on the rear doors. These guys are all manual. So on the inside, when we originally got it, it had seating for 6 people, and they were jump seats where they sat with their backs to the wall. And to make it a little more law enforcement friendly, we removed those seats and added in bench seats because we wanted to be able to get as much of our team in there as possible.
Sure. Well, it looks like it'll hold at least 10 guys now, huh?
At least, and we've had up to 13 guys in full gear inside it.
Wow, excellent.
So yeah, it well exceeded our needs for trying to get enough people to and from the actual scenes that we go to.
Air conditioning vents up above there to keep you cool?
That is, those are the air and heating ducts up on the roof.
So it has a lot of the same features, I guess you'd say, as a car, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an automatic transmission. It does have a diesel motor in it. It's a Caterpillar C7 motor, which is about the same that you see in most large motorhomes that have diesel motors. So it's only about 300 horsepower, so it's nothing overly extravagant. But,
and it probably gets, like I said earlier, about 3 or 4 miles a gallon.
It's better than you think, but it's definitely a gas guzzler.
Yeah, well, it's heavy.
So it is heavy.
You know, it's really functional too when you think about the tactics that have changed in modern law enforcement. So often people watching television or going to the movies just think that all that law enforcement does is run to the front door, storm in, and take over. It's action-packed, but it's high risk. So the tactics that have changed over the last 25 to 30 years warrant the fact that with us to bring an armored vehicle that takes us into technically what's known as a hot zone, especially when you think of all the ability to rescue since Sandy Hook and all the other crises that have occurred across the country. You never know where that could occur.
Right.
So you need to be able to bring a safe zone to a critical event, and that's what this does. I am certain of the safety of those who are inside whenever they may have to respond to something, whether it's planned or unplanned.
Now, I see it has windows, but I'm guessing those are pretty thick too, huh?
They're very thick and they are ballistic, yes.
Oh, ballistic.
The front windshields, there's actually 2 pieces, and each half of those is 273 pounds a piece. So.
Wow. Just the glass?
Just the glass.
Is it glass though, or is it?
There's probably some type of
some other
secret
element
ingredient
in there.
inside there, but as far as I know, it's just glass.
So why don't you hop in and fire it up for us?
Sure. So as we mentioned before, this is a Caterpillar C7 motor, and it is on a Caterpillar chassis, which has a automatic transmission. So the tractor and chassis itself is not that unlike a front loader like you would see using working on the streets or something. So it actually weighs the same as a 966 Caterpillar front loader. So I'm going to go ahead and start it up, and it is going to be kind of loud. Hit the horn. So one of the things that we did install on this rig is there's something that we have to do as far as knock and notice when we're going to serve like a search warrant. And that involves making sure that the occupants of the house know that we're actually at the house. So we did upgrade the horn that came stock on it. So I'll go ahead and show you that right now. So some of the stuff that we had to do prior to putting this into service was changing it from so much of a military and make it more law enforcement friendly for us. So a lot of the stuff that we had to do was interior, other than the exterior, which was the paint and putting some lights on it. In doing that, we utilized almost completely local merchants here in the area in the city of Vacaville to get that done for us. We had a rhino lighting put in on the floor to help protect it and make it slip resistant. We actually had to have our seats recovered. We had benches built by a local welder here in town, and all the interior was done by a local upholstery shop. Our lighting systems were installed by our mechanics at the courtyard, but they were purchased through Watco over in Fairfield, California. So we also had to have a camera system put in that helps us see in front of and in back of to make sure that we're not going to back over or drive over the front of anything because the vehicle sits so high. All this equipment was purchased locally as well.
Chad, thanks for showing us around the vehicle, but have we used this yet? Has it been deployed in Vacaville at all?
We have several times. In fact, the very day that it was approved to go into service, we used it to assist Sacramento PD here in Vacaville serve a warrant for a homicide suspect.
And when this arrived, that pretty much ended any issues at the...
It did, actually. It did exactly as we'd intended for this vehicle to do. And basically its looks were so impending, and as he knew that we were there at his yard, he walked out and gave up immediately. So we didn't have to use any force at all.
So that's a great example of the power and the effectiveness of this vehicle. Any other circumstances where it would be deployed, John?
We've actually used it several times here in town serving search warrants, high-risk search warrants, where the SWAT team is being utilized. And we've also used it as mutual aid with other agencies. It wasn't more than a couple of months back that Solano Sheriff's Office, just outside of city limits north of town, had an incident where they had a subject barricaded in his house with a firearm. And we were the closest unit, and the patrol sergeant who was working, who was also a SWAT team leader, realized what was going on and was able to get our unit in service and out there to assist them pretty rapidly.
So do you need special training to drive this vehicle, or I've got a driver's license? Could I hop in and take it down the street if needed?
It's very easy to drive, yes. Legally, in a non-emergency situation, it would require a Class B license just due to its weight.
I got a Class C. It's not going to work.
In an emergency, if it needs to be driven,
I guess I could. Yeah, if push came to shove, Mark, go out and get the ARV, and yeah, let's hope that never happens.
It's very user friendly.
Yeah,
well, we hope that in the unfortunate situation where we've seen in major incidents across the country, those are the catastrophes that you always say, you hope it never happens here. You plan and you prepare and you train. We also make this available in a mutual aid setting. If there was a need in partnership with the Sheriff's Office and allied agencies, we would heed the call. And that's the value of this. This is not just about us, but it certainly makes us safer in being able to deploy when we're trying to do a search warrant or just some major violent event. That said, I've said it before, you saw the bench seats in the back. When seat belts don't matter, if it was a rescue scenario, as many people that could get inside safely, we would fill it. And that's the value of something like this. It's large enough and we can insert it into what we would call a hot zone in just a moment's notice.
There's an agency back east that actually took it to an elementary school and was able to fit an entire classroom of children into the back of it in a mock extraction.
They're much smaller.
So,
yeah. They
so.
fit in pretty good, probably.
Correct.
if I was a parent of one of those kids, I'd be thrilled that we had this vehicle. So, well, John, anything else you want to add about our ARV or?
Well, if you see it around town, you know, it's certainly gotten some notoriety. People look at it and always wonder what's going on. We don't just drive it around town. Sometimes we might have training scenarios, but for the most part, tactics have changed, and we're modernizing our tactics, and we certainly are militarizing our police.
Well, I think again, for the price, you can't beat the value of this vehicle and how important it has been already, and it could be in the future to the safety of not only police officers, but our residents too.
Absolutely.
So, well, that's it for this episode of On the Beat with Police Chief John Carli. Thanks for watching.